Hello and welcome back to History on the Hoof. Today we're back on Malham Moor at the bottom of Great Close, where we're going to walk through time from the Mesolithic to the Norse or Viking period, the medieval to the 17th and 18th centuries, pausing to look at the likely remains of a Norse or Viking settlement site. As we walk up, you will see the scant remains of what was a glacial tarn on the right-hand side of the path. Over the years, many Mesolithic flints have been found at what would have been its edge, dating as far back as 10,000 years as people followed the retreat of the ice sheets, hunting animals around the edge and fishing. There are also remains of prehistoric and early medieval settlements dotted around what must have been a great place to live. Nobody is quite sure when it was drained, but it's thought it was during historic times, perhaps even by Fountains Abbey in the early medieval period, during their industrial level of sheep farming up here, which we will see more of. During the 1700s, Great Close, at 732 acres, was said to have been one of the largest walled pastures in the north. It played host to huge cattle fairs, and it's recorded in 1786, while rented by a Mr. Birtwistle of Skipton, it would often have upwards of 5,000 head of black cattle grazing on it. He had brought cattle down from northwest Scotland and the Hebrides for markets in the south since around 1745. The cattle were all auctioned off, sometimes in groups of 100 at a time, before another lot arrived for sale. It's said in one year 20,000 cattle passed through. Before 1800, the sales had begun to decline, probably as a result of Birtwistle's death, and shrank back to the annual fair in Malham village. Interestingly, there is a link here to our other videos in Todmorden, where accounts survive from the 18th century of a local farmer and dealer attending these Great Close auctions and bringing home cattle to sell on. As you pass round the great open field, you might miss this, the remains of Great Close House, at one time a pub that fed and watered human visitors to the fairs, but dying with it and gone by the mid-19th century. Continuing up the path, we join the Monk's Road, referring to the medieval landowners of Fountains Abbey, which leads over the hill to Darnbrook and into Littondale, marked by a cross low down by the tarn, which we talked about in another episode. Down to the right in the shallow valley are a myriad of stone walls dating from the early medieval period, used to manage the huge numbers of sheep that were farmed up here under the ownership of the abbey, which grew enormously wealthy from their fleeces. If you get the chance, do take a look at Google Earth, which gives the best view. Up ahead, a group of trees mark Middlehouse, our possible Norse settlement site, named not of one of three, but from the hill behind, which is called Midlo, a good Viking name which has been speculated could have been where the moot for the Thing meetings took place, the local parliament of householders. A quick glance of charters dealing with the area up to the 1300s shows a plethora of Norse personal names like Arkil, Swain and Dolphin, as Fountains Abbey began mopping up gifts of land from the mid-1100s to form a massive estate. The first historical or written down mention of a house here was in the 14th century in a charter, but as we'll see, I think you can safely put that date back to a much earlier period. In 1480, John Brown, a shepherd for the abbot, lived here looking after his 275 wethers, which are castrated rams, and 30 hogs, which are sheep before their first shearing. At the time of the dissolution in 1539, Christopher Brown was living there. The rental for the house or grange was 20 shillings, which is about £420 now, and the pasture 26 shillings and 8pence, which equates to about 480. Within the farmyard enclosure are a barn and 17th century columbarium or dove house, and shell of a much altered but still very striking mid-17th century house. The porch is a later embellishment, put in when the entrance was moved to the left of the original door. The lintel was once part of a window, and the initials over the top commemorate one of the Knowles family who lived there. Middlehouse was lived in up until the 1890s. In the 1891 census, it is recorded as empty, a new Middlehouse farm being built by Walter Morrison lower down the hill in the estate style to match his other estate cottages by the Tarn and Low Dren House. Following that, it was used as a barn up until the 1930s, which seems a rather ignominious end to a site that had probably housed a Viking homestead and a Fountains Abbey Grange. Today, it's under the care of the National Trust. Although fascinating, what is more interesting is a two-room building alongside, which I think was the original house here, probably the Abbey Grange from the 1100s, or maybe we are looking at the foundations of the original Norse or Viking house. The structure, with its neat coins, window, Norse topographical place name evidence and historical records, are compelling. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of History on the Hoof and look forward to speaking to you again soon. If you have enjoyed it, please do subscribe.